everyone, my name is Meera. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking to you about my top 10 reads of 2021. They are of various different genres and a lot of these books caught me by surprise by how much I loved them. So I hope you will stick around till the end of this video and discover some great recommendations that will definitely be a highlight of your 2022 reading. I remember thinking sometime last year, or was it late in 2020, that I wanted to only read books which I would thoroughly enjoy and not really force myself to get through something which wasn't piquing my curiosity. Now, this hasn't always been an easy endeavor because sometimes I would have high hopes for a certain book which wouldn't really come through, and sometimes I would want to give a book another chance, but we know how these things go. So thankfully I have developed this habit of DNFing books that I find to be irredeemable or maybe ones that are not as per my taste. So I did DNF quite a few reads last year. Anyway, so let's get started with this list. Let me know which of these books you have read and what your thoughts were. The first book I'm going to be talking about is The Palace of Illusions by Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. This is a Hindu mythological retelling which visits the events of Mahabharata from the perspective of Draupadi. So what the author has done here is she has given voice to a lot of women figures from the epic who were otherwise relegated to the back seat, not given as much importance as some of the other figures. The author creates this beautiful narrative voice and the story is told from Draupadi's point of view, right? But the way she narrates the events of her life, it will engross you right from the beginning. The first page itself, I knew I was gonna love this book because it had this sense of nostalgia. It reminded me of the mythological TV series I would watch as a child and how enthralled I was with all of their stories, with these themes and lessons that were covered throughout the epic. It is not a lengthy book per se, it's about 300 pages, but because of the writing style, you will not notice time pass by as you're reading it. It has been written with such grace and simplicity that comes across vividly through the pages. There are several time leaps that occur throughout these chapters because of course the story covers an entire lifetime. But what's amazing to notice is that they have been incorporated so seamlessly that you will not find yourself missing out on something or even thinking that wait, this is too abrupt. That doesn't happen at all. There's just so much that I loved about it, and I loved it even more that this was my first read of 2021. A definite 5-star in my opinion, and if you haven't read any Hindu mythology, I would highly recommend that you pick this up because even without a lot of knowledge about the epics, you will still enjoy this book a lot. Next, Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. This is part of a high fantasy series that follows the life of an assassin who barters her freedom in exchange for her life. This is the 4th part of the Throne of Glass series, and I read the first 3 books back to back. You know, the fact of the matter is that I have read hundreds of fantasy books. In fact, fantasy is my all-time favorite genre. But I feel like no series has grown on me as quickly as the Throne of Glass series did. And there are several reasons for this, right? First of all, in this book particularly, there's only so much that can be and is usually new in fantasy books because of these tropes and cliches and stereotypical elements that are often present in them. But at several instances in this book, characters would make choices that you wouldn't think they would. As in, I was so sure that they would, they would take the very quintessential path forward. But then they would do like a complete 180-degree turn, and I was like, okay, that was unexpected. And so that caught me by surprise and added so much to my reading experience. Something I like to observe is that characters, especially those in fantasy books, usually have a lot of restraints and their potential is limited because of them not having the freedom, right? But when at a certain point those boundaries are demolished and they get to be themselves and they get to unleash their power, who are they? And that's something that comes across beautifully in this book about Selena. No spoilers, don't worry. I'm not going to get into any aspect of the plot that might spoil the other three books for you. There's this certain trope that I enjoy in fantasy books, which is when several characters come together to solve a certain mission or to like complete some kind of a contest, and that's something that's present here. It's a very well-paced novel. While I of course enjoy reading the world that this series is set in this book particularly, I feel like it's the characters, their camaraderie, their banter, and the action in the book that made it stand out for me, and I loved reading every bit of it. In fact, I love it enough that I even see myself rereading the series sometime. Some of you may find Selena's storyline to be very cliched, but I personally really enjoy reading about her a lot. And so the more there are books about her, I know I will gobble them up. I really like her character. Third, Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. This is a classic novel that explores the life of Agnes, who sets out to become a governess at this wealthy household, but she doesn't really realize how difficult the path ahead of her is going to be. It explores the divide between the middle and upper class families while also showing us how, house helps, governesses aren't always accorded the respect, the dignity of labor that they deserve. If you are intimidated to pick up classics, I would say that this should be high up on your TBR list because it's one of the most easiest and most interesting classic to immerse yourself in. The writing is simple and straightforward. It's like Agnes is talking to us. Agnes' character is just so pure and down to earth. No matter how much she gets disrespected or how difficult her job becomes, she doesn't give up and she just keeps trudging on, which is very inspirational because if you read the kind of experiences she has to go through, you would definitely get infuriated and want to hit somebody. I don't know where she gets that inner strength from. Her bond with her family is also something very heartening. Even though they tell her like, you don't need to be doing this, she wants to prove herself and she's like, no, I'm going to become a governess. All in all, it's a very comforting read. It's not difficult to get into at all. Don't think of it as a classic in itself because that might put some pressure on you. Just pick up the book and start reading it. It's like one of those books you would want to take to the park and sit under the tree and read and just lose yourself in. It's just very well written and I enjoyed it so much. The fourth book is Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is a romance contemporary novel about Eve Brown, one of the three Brown sisters, who always gets a earful from her parents because she's unable to hold down a job, and so finally, like tired of having to listen to them lecture endlessly, she is determined to find a job for herself and stumbles upon this opportunity at a bed and breakfast which is owned by Jacob. Right from the beginning, the two are at odds with each other, but Eve is determined not to let go of this opportunity because there's a lot in it for her. I've mentioned this in my blog review as well, but it takes a lot for me to love, and I mean love in capital letters, love a romance novel to this end. There's so much new and there's so much refreshing about this. Like Jacob's character, Eve's character, and all of the other characters in the book, they're very refreshing to read about. There's nothing that's, two-dimensional or flat about them. They are full of life and they have their own individuality, which the author brings out very well. Jacob is someone who's very rigid and he lives by the book. He has these set of principles which cannot be challenged. And Eve is like the exact opposite. She is impulsive and she's bubbly and she has this spark to her. She lives in the moment. That's who Eve is. And to see these two characters just set aside their differences and work together, that was just very funny to read about. There are several instances in the book that will have you laughing out loud. I've also read the book that's about Danny Brown, but this is definitely my favorite book in the series. The conflict in the end was a little bit trite, but then again, it's a contemporary novel. How much different can it get? And because the entire book as a whole is just wonderful, I didn't mind it at all. Trust me, if you're looking for a feel-good book, stop everything you're doing and pick this up. Wait, don't stop everything you're doing. Finish watching this video and then pick this book up. You will find yourself smiling throughout. In fact, now that I think of it, There's something that's quite similar between this book and Agnes Grey. Both of them find these jobs because they're trying to prove themselves that, they can be employed. And that becomes like a turning point in their life because they learn so much and they grow so much. So I'm definitely going to be picking up more of Talia Hibbert's works. The fifth book is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is a YA mystery novel about a girl who picks up this old murder case from her town to work on for her school project. Pippa Fitz-Amobi is unstoppable. She is one of those YA characters that does what she wants and will not listen to anyone. And the fact that in several scenes she has very little self-preservation, that shows you that the possibilities in this book are endless, because of which the sense of mystery just intensifies even more. Some of you may know that I love reading psychological thrillers because of how haunting and spooky it can get at times. But seldom have I come across a mystery novel that has sent chills down my spine. Its epistolary format means that when you're reading, you don't just get to see the events unfold from Pippa's perspective, but you also get to read the records that she's keeping, the interviews that she conducts with several townsfolk, and the inferences she forms from that. And if you listen to the audiobook, you will love it even more because of how real it feels. The audio recordings of her interviews and all that, it's very exciting. It's a very well-paced novel. In fact, I love this much more than the sequel. The third book has also come out, which I'm planning to read soon. So if you guys have read all the 3 books of the series, let me know which one's your favorite. I did have some suspects in mind, but of course I wasn't able to guess what the motivation for the crime would have been. Another thing that added to my enjoyment of reading this book is that Pippa is accompanied by Ravi Singh, who is the brother of Sal Singh, the guy who was convicted of the murder. So Pippa and Ravi working together also adds to the depth of the story. If you enjoy books like Truly Devious or what's the other one? One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus, then I am confident that you will love this one. The next book is The Shining by Stephen King. Of course, this is on the list. Did you think otherwise? This is a horror novel about a family who begins living at this hotel because the father gets hired to work as a manager there. Now, the time they move in is off season, so of course there's no one in the hotel. It's a time when there tends to be like snowstorms and they're just stranded in. Of course, that has to be a part of a horror setting, doesn't it? The Overlook Hotel has quite the reputation. It has a vast history of crime and strange occurrences happening there. They usually find it difficult to have managers work the off season, and that in itself shows you the frame of mind the characters are in order to move there in the first place. Jack, the father, he is a recovering alcoholic who has a temper and he's trying to be better and he's trying to manage that side of him. Wendy, the mother, has had a difficult relationship with her own mother. Danny, the little boy, he has psychic abilities which they refer to as the Shining, and this manifests in the form of visions that he gets about things that are going to happen or they have happened somewhere. He can communicate with people who have the Shining through telepathy as well. So these are the 3 main characters in the book, and you get the sense of what horror truly means when you read the book, because it's so much more than just paranormal occurrences, right? It is the human mind and everything that it's capable of. The second reason why I loved reading this book is the setting. They are stranded in a hotel during the off season, which means that they are isolated from civilization. If things were to happen, they have very little way of finding help for themselves. That in itself makes the ambience, the atmosphere so much more thrilling. It comes to a point where with every page that you flip, you can't move your eyes away from the novel because of everything that's unfolding and the horror that you begin to feel. Without a doubt, it is the characters that drive the plot forward. Stephen King's writing is something that I personally believe is an acquired taste. So some of you may not find it to be fast-paced or, writing that's crisp and gets to the point quickly, but I highly recommend that you stay patient. After a third of the way in, it gets increasingly alarming and things pick up pace quickly. So you will definitely find it worth the wait and worth the read. The next book is Arachnid by Aditya Modak. This is a surrealistic fiction which follows Jay Mukherjee. His life, like the others around him, isn't all that cheerful or vivacious. He's merely carrying on living until one day his worst nightmares threaten to morph into reality. That in itself may not tell you a lot about the book, but it's such a short read that I wouldn't want to spoil anything for you or share too much information and change the way you perceive the book in itself. It's very well written. It's such a quick read that once you begin reading it, you'll want to finish the whole thing in one sitting, which you totally can because it's very immersive. It explores how deep trauma runs and the long-lasting effects of childhood fear. Apart from the dark themes that it deals with, which have been written very persuasively, another reason why I really enjoyed reading this book is the view of the dystopian society that we get. So the world as we know it no longer exists. The system of governance has changed. How people go about with their lives has changed. The environmental conditions, it's all different. So everything that you think is wrong with the world right now, think that multiplied 100 times. That's what parts of the world in Aditya Modak's book look like. There aren't a lot of characters that play crucial roles in this book. It's just Jay and him going through various phases in his life and how his fear has sort of molded the way he perceives everything around him. I don't know if you know this about me, but I enjoy reading stories that are extraordinary and that go beyond the norm. So this one very much aligns with that, and that's why I enjoyed reading it a great deal. 8th, The Stationery Shop of Tehran by Marjan Kamali. This is a historical fiction about two people who fall in love during unfortunate times. Roya's visits to the stationery shop take on additional meaning when she encounters Bahman, a steadfast believer in equality and activism. The novel is set in Tehran, and the author's writing paints such a vibrant picture of the culture. It is written very soulfully and the story lingers in you long after you finish reading it. At least that was the case for me. It's one of the most beautifully written books I have ever read in my entire life. The story is told through flashbacks, so decades after the events of Roya and Bahman's youth have transpired, we get to hear about what really went on in their life and how their past has influenced many aspects of their life in the future. The story in itself is quite heartbreaking, as you may know from the synopsis itself, and to read of the plight of all of these characters who've had to go through so much hardships. Their stories are all interconnected, and it's basically like this big web of deceit and miscommunication and lost love. It's just truly heartrending to read all of their stories. The book follows multiple storylines, so it's not just Roya or Bahman's story that we read, but about their families, their relatives, people of their acquaintances who are very irrevocably involved in their lives. And you would think that that may overcomplicate the plot or make the narrative in itself very intricate, but it's not. It's a very balanced story in its portrayal of each of these storylines. I absolutely loved reading this book. There's no question about that. And I would highly recommend it to you if you're looking for a melodious historical fiction. 9th, Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. It is a psychological thriller about a couple who go away to this Scottish bed and breakfast as a weekend getaway. They are trying to mend their marriage, but little do they know that that's not really what's in store for them. What worked for this? Okay, there are several things that worked for me about this novel. First is the ambience. So it's this resort, that is this chapel that has been converted into a B&B, is set near a lock. All around is just snow, snow, snow till the ice can see. That location in itself made me so excited to pick up this book, and the author doesn't disappoint. It makes the story even more intriguing because you don't know what's about to happen, and there's a lot of suspense that's in the air. Next is the narrative structure. So we're not only reading what goes on when both of them reach the chapel, but chapters that alternate in between these also cover letters that the wife has written to Adam. Right from the beginning, you can sense that there's a lot of tension between Adam and Amelia, and you don't know why their marriage is in such a dilapidated state. But the letters definitely help shed light on what this couple's relationship looked like in the beginning. Lastly, the twist. Oh, what do I say about the twist? The twist that you definitely don't see coming. They were jaw-dropping twists. I couldn't believe my eyes that the author had come up with something like this. It's genius, to say the least, and a testament of the author's writing prowess, because if the novel hadn't been written so well, that twist wouldn't work for you, right? Like, you would either see it coming or it wouldn't be as convincing enough. But because everything in this book is just so well placed, that ending will just it's mind-blowing. Pick it up, okay? It's so good. Like, this is one of my all-time favorite psychological thrillers, easily. Another thing that was new for me is that Adam has this condition called prosopagnosia, which is face blindness, and that's something I hadn't read about, so it was definitely very interesting to get to know a little bit more about what that's like. I'm really shocked that this book did not win the Goodreads Choice Awards. I was so certain that this had to be the winner because I couldn't imagine any other thriller mystery novel being better than this one. And the last book I'm going to be talking about today is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. This is a YA contemporary novel about a group of 4 teenagers who call themselves the Liars. They meet at this island every summer because they're somehow part of the Sinclair family. They're cousins and friends. Their family is not as perfect as made out to be, and one summer they take matters into their own hands to rectify everything that's going wrong. This is my second time reading this book, and I remember before picking it up, I was thinking to myself, surely I won't love it as much as I did then. But oh boy, was I wrong. I loved it even more, if that's possible. The writing is quite unlike anything I have read. I remember thinking that even the first time I picked it up, which was years before. The author uses repetition to drive home a certain point, and she also has this tendency to alternate the length of her sentences and paragraphs and create this rhythm which just stands out. And once again, it has epistolary elements in it. What a surprise. The story is told from Caden's point of view, and she's one of the liars. What happens is, towards the second half of the book, or at least I think towards the end, she starts using these fairy tale retellings to convey some deeper meaning about their life experiences. And these retellings have some element of suspense in them because it's written in such a way that you don't know which version of it is true and how much of it is just based on her imagination. Don't go into this book thinking of or expecting some great character arc and character development. That doesn't happen. It's just a story that will take you by surprise. I don't think I want to say anything more about this because, well, it's an experience to be cherished. So just trust me and pick it up. I mean, trust me if you enjoy reading YA novels, that is. This time around that I read, I marked out a lot of passages, did a lot of annotation, because in addition to this surface level plot that we have, the book also explores what it's like to be wealthy, what it is to create this facade, experience a sense of pressure to be perfect at all times, and it tries to subvert that through the actions of the liars. All the books I spoke about today, it's not in the order of how I like them, it's just in the order of how I read them throughout the year. And I didn't have to think too hard about choosing these books because they were clear winners compared to my other reads. Almost all of them are 4.5 to 5-star reads. If you want to know more about my thoughts on all of them, just visit my blog. The link is in the description. So that's it for this video. I am really eager to know what were your top favorite reads of 2021. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next week with another video. Bye.